right now, we're still in it and really focused on Chicago before we would step back and take a bigger picture answer.
Welcome back to another robotic edition of Enough Said. My name is
I'm inspired by that. Are you inspired by Cousins?
We're not the robots.
Living, breathing.
Man, I am motivated. I am motivated to do the show.
Back this week.
I'm here.
Good to have you back.
So happy.
And Lori Fisher gets us all started with her beaming face. Hi,
yes,
Lori.
Hi, I'm glad Justin's back too. I'm glad you caught your flight and you are willing to make some time for us.
Wow, that's
I love it.
Wow.
I'm just kidding.
I thought her New Year's resolution was I'm not going to be passive aggressive.
Yeah, no, well, that was pretty aggressive.
Okay, let's move on.
True. That's
Quarterback
true.
Kirk Cousins is off the COVID list, and he will start this Sunday against the Bears. This weekend's game is the final one of the season, as we know. Cousins said this week he wants to be a Viking for the rest of his career. What do you think his status with the team and Coach Mike Zimmer's status with the team will be? I know it kind of maybe depends on what happens on Sunday, but let's just go from there, Dan.
Well, I think Cousins' status depends largely on the other two answers other questions being answered, right? And that is, did Mike Zimmer coach his last game? I think it's likely, or will he coach his last game Sunday? I think it's likely that that was his last game.
Mm-hmm.
Rick Spielman, what's his future? I think there's more of a feeling that he might end up surviving either in his current position or moving upstairs. And here's what bugs me about that. If the Wilfs, look, it's their team. And if ultimately they consult whoever they consult and come to the conclusion that we want to keep Rick Spielman here, we do think it's time for a coaching change, and we're going to entrust Rick to do that again because overall we think that the last coach he hired was good. It didn't end up very good, but okay, we're accepting it. Then I'm fine with that. I might disagree with it, but I'd respect it. What I don't like is this notion, and people who cover this team are insisting that this is true, that there's a chance that the Wilfs won't make a move because they don't know where to go to hire a general manager.
Well, that would be bad.
And that would be reckless.
Yeah.
That would be, can you fire the owner? That makes no sense.
Right.
If they're going to keep him, do it because you think in conviction that we're going to stay the course and we don't always think what's coming up next is better. Not because we don't know where to go.
No.
That's absurd.
Well, it'd be one thing if they just got the team. How long have the Wilfs had the team? They've been around the NFL for a long time. Long enough to know how to get a stadium built, long enough how to know to get a Super Bowl.
Correct.
So clearly they're not clueless.
No, the Super Bowl to be played here without the Vikings.
That's true. Yeah. We
different.
were one step away. But on the triumvirate, Cousins, Spielman, and Zimmer, Cousins is probably the most likely to be here because he's going to be the heart. You can't just fire him and pay him whatever you need to pay him, right?
Correct.
You have to figure out a way either to trade him, which
$45 million.
that seems rather unlikely, or you somehow.
I think it's possible.
To who though? Who's taking that on?
There's a couple teams. Well, you'd have to help them.
Well, and it's a team that was like the Vikings was 3 years ago when they did this whole
better
thing.
than what we had.
Which makes sense.
Yes.
To me, it made sense to do what the Vikings did 3 years ago.
Right.
Obviously, when it doesn't hit, we've talked about it for 5 years. When it doesn't hit, then you start hedging your bets, you start kicking it down the road, and then you're where you are now, a below 500 team that, even though the quarterback said, well, we're in it, like, in what?
In what?
The plexiglass box, for COVID protocols. So, but that's what happens. But I'm with you. If the theory is that Zimmer has had a long enough run, and whatever you think of it, and I happen to think he did a good job. It wasn't a failure. They obviously had good teams. Double down on Spielman. He's had about double the time, so I'm fine with them taking a fresh look at everything. And it's not an indictment on the entire tenure, but at some point, you do need someone else to take a look at it.
I've said this a couple times on the radio. Morally, I think if if Zimmer alone takes the fall here, I think it's an injustice.
I agree, too.
I
30
think
seconds.
Spielman's got too much involvement in too many key areas, not the least of which is the quarterback position.
Correct.
Which he's bungled several times. You could say, well, he finally got it right, but he got it right at such a cost, literally.
That's it.
And an expense that without a payoff, which is even a playoff run. We haven't had we had one playoff victory with Kirk, correct?
Yes.
That you can't leave that out. Developing young backup quarterbacks who might have been professional enough to actually throw out there against Green Bay. That's another place where Spielman has failed. So I think this is a shared responsibility, but do we have any faith on the people in charge to make the change that gives this a fresh look, a chance for this team to go someplace in the future?
And when we hear changes...
Well, now I just want to keep all of them. Now I'm scared. Now you've terrified me that the Wilfs don't know what they're doing.
It shouldn't be. I could tell them 5 people to call.
True.
It's not that difficult to do. I refuse to believe it's that difficult.
Would the changes be Sunday night or Monday?
Probably Monday morning. Although the Wills fired Mike Tice right after the game, right?
They did.
They
That's
brought
true,
the press
yeah.
releases
Yeah, you're right.
around. His kid read it. He was crying,
Right.
the whole bit.
Okay,
Hopefully they've learned from that. Maybe wait till Monday.
Moving on, the Wild beat the Boston Bruins last night 3-2. The headlines: Kaprizov got hurt in the second period, some controversy over that. And Matt Boldy scored his first NHL goal in his home state. It was Wild's first game since last weekend's Winter Classic. They play the Capitals tomorrow night at home, Dan.
Well, I meant to text our guy Lou Nanny about this because I know the hit. He was very enraged about the hit that might have Kaprizov. It looked bad. It did not look good the way he was holding his shoulder. Didn't it look like a shoulder kind of a situation?
Yeah, it's bad.
This remains, to me, the only professional sport in which players still feel comfortable taking free shots like that. And that's what bugs me. You could say, well, there have been worse hits, and he was vulnerable.
And all that's true.
And all that might be true. Not the point.
Right.
It's the only sport left where players still feel, oh, I got a free shot at him, I'm going to take it. And until you get serious about doing something about that, which would be suspended for half a season, as ridiculous as that sounds, or you change the culture enough to where we go, we're not going near that. Because you even hear, I don't remember the name of the guy who did it, but he basically said, well, I kind of understand why they responded they would.
Right.
I would have done the same thing.
Right.
That's why it's still in the culture and it's embedded. Until it's gone, this sport is always going to be second rate regarding the idea of wanting to see your best players play.
What sport is comfortable with just taking free runs at the Stars? That's the funniest part.
Yes.
Is you can't, and then the team takes umbrage with it, and then you fight.
The cycle of violence, the whole bit.
And this guy had 3 penalties in the game alone. But
he had more penalty minutes than he had minutes played.
Yeah, if you take a shot at Aaron Rodgers, like you're getting penalized first of all, and everybody like the rules are to protect those guys. NBA, same thing. You're 100% right. Even with the unwritten rules of baseball, which we think are ridiculous, at least that's meant to protect people.
30 seconds.
If someone throws behind somebody. But here's the biggest problem. You saw the graphic. Wild, after being the best team in the league about a month ago, are now 4th in the Central Division, which, as I understand, means they're not in the Central Division playoff part of it at the moment, right? They could do a wild card, obviously.
Right.
But here's who they're missing now. Kaprizov, Eriksson Ek, Spurgeon, Cam Talbot, Greenway, Bukestad, Duhayman. Did you see the Jonas Brodin news today? Comes back after COVID and now blocked the shot last night, didn't practice today. Your best defenseman is now out. That's the problem they have, and who knows when they're going to play all these games that have gotten canceled.
And we brought up fresh talent.
Yeah.
One of them getting the big, as Lori said, getting the big
Boldy,
goal,
yep.
Boldy. But there's only so much depth in that regard. So now this challenge is what? Just hold the fort.
Exactly.
Just don't get too far buried to give yourself a chance to get back into it. We're only a couple of points out of first.
No, I know. I was trying to be dramatic.
And that Bruin?
But a month ago we were first, and there were no problems.
Yeah.
Kaprizov was on fire. Cam Talbot was great. Now we're the Iowa Wild.
You gave the head coach an extension to handle crises exactly like this. Let's see if he's up to it.
That Bruin to blame is Trent Frederick. That's who
Thank you.
went after our guy. Up next. Karl Anthony Towns and D'Angelo Russell are out of COVID-19 protocols and are back playing with the team, but a few other guys stole the show on Wednesday night when the Wolves beat the Thunder. The two teams play again tonight, but in Oklahoma City, Justin.
They're right where they need to be. You want to talk about being in the mix? They are in the mix. The Western Conference has never been more gettable. And I'm not saying they're going to win the West, but for this team, what's success in its history? Finding a way to get to the playoffs, right? As sad as that is.
And getting swept.
And getting swept for 7 years or whatever it was until that one run in 2003. Am I reading too much into the whole accountability angle of it? Do you think people are getting too excited about that?
Well, are you talking about the decision to not play D'Lo down
Well,
the
that
stretch?
or even earlier in the week, Anthony Edwards getting pulled right out of the
first
gate.
quarter.
Yeah, because he's not
No,
playing
I like
defense.
the trend if it's a trend.
And that's the key is what they're doing now. They need to continue to do and follow through. And it can't
Sustain
just be, it can't be a week of it because we've seen that. We've talked about it on this show for 5 years that they'll have a good week and then they'll punt for 3 weeks. And why it would be doubly frustrating this year is because what I said. This isn't your dad's Western Conference where you need to win 60 games to sneak your way into an 8 seed. Even when they made the playoffs with Jimmy Butler, I can't remember what they won that year, but they had to win a lot of games to get that done. You're right in the mix. Like, it is right there for you to take what I think would be a legitimate step for this group of players to get into, whether it's the play-in game or not even mess with the play-in game situation and actually have a series. So it's going to be disappointing if they don't take advantage of this opportunity.
Anthony Edwards was lauded for boldly declaring we're going to make the playoffs, and I'm saying that shouldn't even be a story. That isn't even news because, in fact, to your point, The 10th place team in the conference right now has a record of 15-22.
That's everything.
And
yeah.
so the conference is utterly transformed from how challenging it used to be.
Right.
So at the very least, you should make the playoffs. The question is whether you want to challenge yourself, as you say, and not settle with 10 or settle with 9, but actually give yourself a good position, which would indicate a legitimate record. So they have fewer excuses than ever about not making the postseason.
Close your eyes. Go back to that day. What do you see? Rioters rampaging, waving for the first time inside this Capitol. Confederate flag that symbolized the cause to destroy America, to rip us apart.
Welcome back to Enough Said. President Biden speaking on Thursday, marking the one-year anniversary of the attacks on the U.S. Capitol. A mob attacked police while former President Trump sat at the White House watching it all play out on TV. President Biden accused Donald Trump and his supporters of holding a, quote, dagger at the throat of democracy. Republicans and Democrats seem to see that day differently, Dan.
I'll read you a quote, not from the President of the United States. There can be no soft pedaling what happened and no absolution for those who planned, encouraged, and aided the attempt to overthrow our democracy. Love of country demands nothing less. That's true patriotism. Any idea who offered that?
I'm going to guess, is that Karl Rove?
Karl Rove.
Yeah, I think I read that.
Hard, like
in the Journal earlier.
Left-leaning
I know.
MSNBC acolyte.
I know.
Karl Rove.
I know.
Look, I don't even. I feel like there's some stuff we continue to discuss and hope that at some point the message is going to get through that until the folks who weren't bothered by this or encouraged it acknowledge what took place, we can't go on with the rest of our lives. But if that's true, we're never going to get on with the rest of our lives.
I know.
It's just not going to change. No matter, it makes no difference. Especially the fact that, as I was told, one Republican House member, shows up for the moment of silence for the Capitol police officers who died last year. I think it was Liz Cheney. This is the Law and Order Party. This is the party that says Blue Lives Matter. This is the party that says, law and order is an important issue. Pathetic, inexcusable, and yet it will be said, well, yeah, but they're just trying to rub our noses in it, and so it becomes this ongoing game of what I like to call Sharks versus the Jets, and we get nowhere.
Well, I think McConnell said something about that on the 6th. Like, it's a shame Democrats are using this and politicizing it, and that's where we go. And the thing about, Biden's getting a lot of attention for how direct he was at the former president, President Trump. Won't even say his name for whatever that's worth. People seem to make a big deal about that. But that's the Trump dilemma from 26, because the instinct, I think what Biden wants to do and what a lot of us want to do is just move on from that and ignore that. But we're seeing increasingly that you can't do it. You couldn't do it in 2015 and 2016. You can't do it now in 2022 because so many people, for whatever the reason, are still afraid of him, afraid what he represents in terms of the power that they can have. So we can never move on from it. As much as we'd like to, that's the dilemma that Biden has and everybody else.
Final point, Dan.
I think that Biden said was that this is what I've never been able to understand about Trump. What I want to say to any individual Trump supporter is, you do understand he doesn't give a damn about you.
I know.
He doesn't care about you. The only reason he's continuing to fight this fight is it's his ego. He can't let go. He felt he got had. He got embarrassed.
Enough
it's
said.
not love of country. It's not love of a different way of hearkening back to a different way of life, and yet apparently that message for many Trump supporters continues to be lost.
Next up, COVID seems to be spreading like wildfire with that Omicron variant, even boosted people getting COVID. Most kids went back to school on Monday after a longer winter break. A lot of debate on questions if they should have actually gone back in-person learning or should have been distanced the next week or two. Some schools have already gone to distance learning. We're really in a lose-lose situation right now because we want our kids in school because we know that's good for them, but then also, you need teachers to be there as well, and if they're getting sick, then we just don't have enough staff for them. Dan?
Well, the timing here is awful.
Yeah.
And maybe that's the message, because the timing through this whole COVID-19 winter of our discontent has always been awful.
It's never
for
been
one reason or
convenient.
another. It's never been convenient.
Yep.
At a time where I think a lot of pro-vaccination people have said we did more damage than we even realized, and the question is, when we started this, we probably needed to, because we didn't have vaccines and we had so little knowledge. But at a time where I think a lot of hardcore pro-vaccination people have said we got to be really, really strident about keeping kids in school. We've got the added dilemma of the spread is making it impossible for some schools that even want to commit to that bit because they can't keep their teachers there. That said, what happened in Chicago to me with the public school teachers is inexcusable and pathetic because they pulled the plug before they needed to pull the plug. And you know why they pulled the plug? They said, well, it's still not exactly safe. We've spent one of the bills that allegedly was going to give upwards of close to $1 million to literally every school in the country to deal with mitigation issues. So that's my problem here is there's still, I think, among some, including the teachers union in Chicago, this almost this belief like, oh, what, you want free daycare?
Right.
Do parents have to apologize for wanting their children to get the best public education possible? You shouldn't have to apologize for that. But now what we're fighting is a lot of schools are making the decision to go distance learning because they have no choice because they just don't have enough teachers.
And we've just got to figure out a way to make it work, whether it's making sure more kids are getting vaccinated, if it's the test to stay policy, right, that a lot of schools are also doing, and making sure that tests are available there, whether it is allowing teachers that maybe still don't feel safe because they're older or whatever it is, give them an out. We do have to figure something out, right? Because what we did early, I was in support of it, and certainly I know the damages with 3 school-age kids of being at home and sitting on the iPad.
We had to do it then.
It was absolutely necessary, but the staffing thing is real. I mean, they'd have to figure out a way. There's subs that you need subs everywhere. You need new paras everywhere. Like, they've got to figure that out, too.
Next up, former Tampa Bay Bucs star Antonio Brown is accusing the team of a cover-up. He is blaming Coach Bruce Arians for walking out of the game against the Jets on Sunday. He says the coach made him play with a bad ankle, even giving him a dangerous painkiller, that he didn't quit, that he was cut. Arians says he was unaware of the injury. Justin.
Well, who do you choose in this one? That's the thing, because they were aware of the injury to the extent that he was on the injured report. They knew he had a bad ankle. Now, did they know?
And on apparently a play count. For that reason, because of the injury.
Along with Mike Evans, I think. Now, did they know that it was specifically bothering him at that moment? I don't know. I have a tough time, as a guy who is kind of tired of the Antonio Brown saga, because wherever he goes, it seems like stuff like this follows him, right? And he keeps getting opportunities. Why? Because he's really good, right? And he's helped multiple teams.
Super Bowl last year.
Got it exactly right. Yeah. And so there's a reason why he keeps getting all these chances. But I also don't have much sympathy for Tampa Bay, because you kind of know what you're getting, right? You should go in. So if they're annoyed, and I think Brady, Brady, nothing sticks to Brady, right? I mean, because he was definitely bringing Antonio Brown a lot. He wants another option, basically doing the we're on to Cincinnati. We're not going to talk about it. Now, there's not time to talk about that. We just want to focus on playing this week. I don't have a lot of sympathy for Tampa Bay either, given that just 3 weeks ago, after the whole vaccination card episode with Antonio Brown, Bruce Arians said, best interest of our team that he's here and he's playing, so we're good. So I really have no sympathy for anybody in this situation.
I think you hit the key thing here. Brown might have a bit of a beef, right? But his credibility is undermined by his own behavior for over so many periods of time, with so many different teams, that you're going to have to convince me that he's telling the whole story. They might have been fudging a bit.
Sure.
But how do we trust him at this point? And as you say, Tampa Bay, if they'd done the right thing, they'd have cut. As soon as that vaccination card nonsense took place, you end it right there. And if you don't, then you're basically saying we get what we deserve from that point forward.
Welcome back to Enough Said. It's the lightning round time.
Plenty of time to spread out, too.
Yes. This isn't going to feel like a lightning round.
We never know. Do we have 2 minutes or 10? No, just kidding. First up, actor Sidney Poitier died at the age of 94. He was the first black man to win an Oscar for Best Actor for the movie Lilies of the Field in 1964. He grew up in the Bahamas but moved to the U.S. when he was 15 years old, Dan.
Had great acclaim for a terrific actor. Guess Who's Coming to Dinner among his key roles. My favorite role for him is a movie called To Sir with Love, where he plays the part of a teacher who basically he walks in cold to a British classroom that's just a mess. Nobody's paying attention to anything, and guess what he does? Sir transforms their lives. Lulu, by the way, sings the title track to Sir with Love. I'm sure you're both familiar with the song. Lulu.
Next up.
I'll listen to it.
Outstanding tune.
Great video of Denzel from when he won the Oscar for Training Day.
Yes.
Yes.
Basically saying, I've been chasing Sydney my whole life, and wouldn't you know it, I finally get this, and they gave one to him too. And,
That was a
Chadwick
great moment.
Boseman did the same thing
Yeah.
to Denzel, the late, great Chadwick Boseman.
A true pioneer.
Definitely.
We didn't find out about another pioneer of television, our golden girl, Betty White. We didn't find out she died until after last week's show. She would have been 100 on January 17th. Do you have a Betty White story? I saw her at Leno years ago, 2008, I think, and she is always a joy to watch. Dan?
That's the thing. When she was around, everybody felt good because she was going to do something funny. She was going to be self-deprecating. She could put people in the meat grinder in a disarming way.
I mean, she played that role of, okay, what you tell old people is they can say anything and get away with it. So you know what I'm going to do?
Yes.
I'm going to say anything and get away with it. And what are you going to do to me?
Yes.
And she played it brilliantly.
I see her most in The Proposal with Sandra Bullock and your guy Ryan Reynolds.
Yes,
She plays the grandmother, looking for Easter eggs, Sandra, the whole thing. But she was great in everything.
Yeah.
It was
There's
great.
that Betty White challenge right now. Donate $5 to a local animal rescue because she was big into saving animals.
Oh, good to know, too.
You didn't know that. So.
Sounds like Lori's looking for our credit card number.
That's
here.
a very
I might after the show.
For other reasons, that might be-
Justin, the Edina Hornet logo, as we know it, is going away. This has been a big controversy for a while. The man and former alum who designed it sued the district over copyright issues. The district said this week it just can't find a solution for it. So they will still be the Hornets, but there will be a new look at some point here.
Yeah, I mean,
Is it time for a freshening anyway? Maybe it's a blessing.
Block E. They've been going with the Block E recently in this. Yeah, and I do have some collector item. Now it's collector item stuff. For my era, 20 years ago, although
but
I
if you
couldn't
wear
find
it,
any
are
of
you
them.
in trouble? Could you be
Maybe.
sued?
I probably have to send a check to the guy.
Every time you actually wear it?
Hey, I love my hometown, but nothing is more Edina than a high-stakes legal battle over the logo of
Would
the
you
school.
consider
It'd be a lot of money to
changing
change
You think
stuff.
they're talking about changing the name of the nickname altogether?
Maybe the name of the city.
Yeah.
Maybe it's time they just rebrand Tolosa. Maybe they just rebrand
Yeah.
everything and take a
Would
fresh
it
look
matter
at
if
it.
they rebranded? No, they just get ripped even more than Edina already gets ripped.
Mostly.
Clickbait.
Yeah.
started
But
to be
what
in
would be your
headlines.
idea, Justin? What would be the
For a new city?
no,
A new
for
logo?
The new logo.
Just do the E. Everybody does the E.
E?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we don't need a new logo. I mean, Hornet's a Hornet.
Hornet has a lot of different looks, does it not?
It does.
Yeah, I think it's more versatile.
Maybe not so
section.
angry of a hornet.
That's the
Like
point. It's
a cuddly
intimidating.
one.
Yeah.
Okay,
Oh,
and
yeah.
Cuddly
finally,
Hornet.
No, you don't want
that
to
doesn't make
cuddly
sense.
Hornet.
Contradiction.
Yeah, no.
your guy, Dr. Bill Morice, Big Knocker, known on your show, his name came up
Look at him.
when COVID first hit, and now he's your go-to guy to talk about COVID. He made the 100 people to know for 2022 list by Twin Cities Business Magazine. What a star. And we were talking, is he really going to get a tattoo that says top 100?
Well, all I'm going to say is
Probably.
I tend to be self-deprecating to a fault.
Yeah.
But if you're asking me to put a percentage on how much of that is about his appearances on the radio with us, I'd say we're responsible for 80% of it. Is that
Easily.
fair?
Easily 80%.
Maybe higher?
I can't believe we weren't noted in the story about
we are
him.
acknowledged.
Oh, are we?
We are acknowledged in it. Yeah, his appearances on the show
Interesting.
are acknowledged.
You know what he has going for him?
What's that?
What's that?
He is smart and relatable.
Yeah.
Very well stated.
Well, I was going to say.
And measured without being. I think he tries to follow the science without being in lecture mode.
And he can communicate it well.
Enough said.
Points of view, et cetera.
He
et
can
cetera.
communicate it well.
Yeah.
And that video we saw of him where he had that nice shirt and tie. No